One of my predictions, like post-election, is that we're going to be seeing a lot more building. And I'm not talking about developers. I mentioned this before. That gets deeper. It's like supply and demand, and they're selling that to somebody. There's a bunch of parties involved. I'm talking about the people that buy land to build. And since the pandemic, we've had a lot of construction, and you have like 80% of the labor here comes from mainland. You don't even have enough people in Baja to do construction. What happened is the demand got so high that pricing got out of control. And then you had the peso drop to like 16. So for a while it was like max 18, but really like 17. Now, why is this important? Well, if you are an American or a Canadian and you're paying for construction, right? You get a quote, you're paying in US dollars. That is converted to Mexican pesos because the construction crew, they're getting paid in the peso. All the materials, they're buying in the peso. All the permits, pesos. All the, attorney's fees. Let's say you're doing a $600,000 build or something. You convert that at 16 to 1, and then you convert that at 20 to 1. That's a big difference. Like, you're taking a haircut. And I'm not a currency expert. I don't claim to be, but I think we're going to stick around 20 to 1, which is good for foreigners. And I think that'll help people get better quotes. I've helped a couple, I think it's right now 5 people that are building, 2 on the Pacific side, 2 in the East Cape, 1 in the corridor, and hopefully another one soon in the corridor in Palmilla. So I think a lot of people are going to start building like their homes. Now they might build that to sell it too, but that's not like a developer building 200 condos to sell out. So dollar to the peso is huge. It's more like the Wild West out there. You have these people that are building without permits. Somebody in Zacatito's got like hammered by local authorities because he didn't have any permits. So people try to cut corners and all this. And look, this isn't Baja the 1990s where there really was like no enforcement. So another thing that I've noticed from builds is you started building 3 years ago, like right before interest rates jacked up. And that's where you saw like the peso kind of drop. Maybe you paid at 20 to 1 and then it dropped like 16 to 1. Well, dude, now they have 15, 20% less money because they're converting that all to peso, and you had inflation happening at the same time, which is why they were raising interest rates. You'd have your house, 70% done. They're like, hey, we run out of money. Now, what are you going to do there? There's like 2 situations. You either pay them, well, there might be 3. You pay them to finish it. You get pissed at them because they lied to you, fire them and pay somebody else to finish it. Or you just wait until you get more money to finish it, right? The guy that's doing the 7,000 square foot house, he told me that they were waiting 1 month for the other construction company to even get them simple estimates. So a lot of these people are just so busy that they don't even want to take the time to, do the work. It was like real estate, everybody was selling so much. And then when the market slowed down a little bit, people weren't used to doing work to get the sale. And then they're complaining that it's a slow market. And it's like, well, you're not doing work either. You're used to, all this stuff falling in your lap. And I think to a certain extent, that's kind of what happened in construction, just because there was a shortage of, I would say quality builders. And then you go to these high end places like Carencia. I had this guy reach out in Carencia. He's building, really nice guy, lawyer from Denver. What do you think the difference for a 4,000 square foot home in Carencia? What do you think the difference in dollar value between 2 different build quotes?
Ooh,
for the same house?
maybe $1 million?
Yeah, it was over $1 million. So he was like, wait, why wouldn't I go? So he's like, do you know who this builder is? Why is our quote so much lower than this guy's? I'll put it like this, a place that's on the east side of the peninsula. What they're charging people to build there is, I think outrageous would be right here, and they're like 3 times. I wouldn't call it outrageous. I would say it's high end, and they're charging 3 times that. So it's just I told that to a builder who I work with, and he's like, that's doesn't even make sense. And he's like, even if you got marble toilets, man, it doesn't even make sense. There's a lot of building that's going to happen. A lot of people buy land and think they're going to build on it, but they don't. because it's capital intensive. I think a lot of those people are going to build now. And they might have been waiting for a while, or, somebody that had a quote that didn't like it, maybe gets another quote now, and maybe it's a little bit more reasonable. So I think we're going to see a lot more building from those smaller projects, not these huge developments, because that's deeper.
Let's say like a regular style home, like nothing crazy. Let's call it, let's use even numbers, let's say $1 million, like somewhere around like 800 to $1 million. How much does it cost when you before building permits? How long does that process usually take to complete so you can start building?
So I think it depends on what you're trying to do, but I think the quote unquote like soft costs, if you're not talking about architect, like just like permits, would be like maybe 1%, 2%. So it's not going to be that much. The permitting process, depending on where it is, can take a while. So especially like we're going into the holidays here, and like everything's going to shut down, right? I would plan on a good, like, once you have everything, because the last thing you want to do, and that's another thing why you need a good builder, because they know like which documents to submit. So that's going to be a couple months. I had this guy who basically, he's like, hey, in 3 years, I want to be in my place. I was like, well, you kind of need to buy the land now, because I was like, you got to like close on the land. Then you got to get like the surveys, then you got to submit, and I'm like, it always takes more time than you think it's going to take. We're doing a build in the corridor. It's a big, I think it's like 4,500 square feet. Everything was done, and then they like changed the pool. They wanted to change, it was like the garage. They had to resubmit to the HOA, and then they have to, so it's this huge process. So like if and you have like the plans and stuff, then it goes quick, but you always see this, or it's like the husband and the wife, and they're going back and forth. So it's always longer than you think. But I think really depending on the size of the home, once the building starts, I think you can say 9 months to a year, depending on where you're at, the size of the place, right? I get very skeptical when construction goes too quick, because then it's like, you start, all of a sudden the toilets aren't flushing right, and the piping's busting, and this is brick and mortar, cement, so it's not easy to get into the walls and fix stuff. Going back and fixing stuff, it's a lot better to do it right the first time. So I think like once you have all the documents and stuff, I would say like 3 to 4 months plus, the build time. That's if you don't change stuff, because I've seen it where it just gets pushed on down the road.